So I stumbled across this wild stock called BitMine Immersion Technologies, ticker BMNR. And trust me, this one's a head turner. Right now, BMNR is trading around 60 bucks, and it's been moving like crazy lately. We're talking huge swings up and down. Now, before you roll your eyes and think, oh great, another random crypto stock, hold up. This company's story is actually kind of nuts. Let's start from the top. So BitMine is what you'd call a small cap blockchain company, right? They're based out of Las Vegas, and their main thing is industrial scale digital asset mining. Basically, mining crypto like Bitcoin and Ethereum, but using some really advanced tech setups. But here's where it gets interesting. They recently announced that they hold over 2.83 million ETH tokens. Yeah, million. That's not a typo. On top of that, they've got total crypto and cash holdings of about $13.4 billion. That number alone makes people stop scrolling. You're probably wondering, wait, how does a small cap company end up with that much crypto? Yeah, I wondered the same thing. They've been building what they call the Alchemy of 5%. Basically, they own more than 2% of the entire ETH token supply, meaning they're not just some side player in the crypto space. They're one of the biggest Ethereum holders out there. Pretty wild, right? But here's where things get tricky. Not everything's rainbows and rockets. According to Van Eck, one of the big investment firms, there's a warning floating around about ETH dilution risk. In plain English, that means the more Ethereum keeps expanding its supply, the more it could water down how valuable those tokens really are, especially for holders who don't stake their ETH. So yeah, BMNR is sitting on a pile of Ethereum, but the long-term question is, does that pile get more valuable, or does it slowly lose its punch if ETH keeps getting diluted? That's the kind of tug-of-war investors are thinking about. Now, let's talk about the stock itself. If you look at the charts, it's been on a roller coaster. The daily chart shows that big spike up around mid-year. It shot past 160 bucks before cooling off. Now it's sitting in the $60 range, and it's actually showing some solid support around the max pain level at $55. That's like the zone where both call and put buyers kind of meet in the middle. Basically, the market's sweet spot for balance. The put wall is sitting down at $51, and the call wall's around $59. And funny enough, BMNR is hovering right above that, which could hint that the market's expecting some short-term strength. You can see volume building up too. Lots of green candles, especially after those big dips. So yeah, buyers are clearly showing interest again. Now, when I pulled up the 4-hour and 1-hour charts, I noticed something cool. The price has been grinding up steadily from that mid-50s level, breaking above resistance and staying there. That's usually a good sign that momentum's flipping back bullish. But just to keep it real, this is still a high volatility stock. It's not your slow and steady type like Coca-Cola or Microsoft. This thing moves like a crypto on espresso shots. Speaking of volatility, the implied volatility is sitting at 118%. That's huge. For context, that means option traders expect big price swings in the short term. So yeah, there's action here, but also risk. The put-to-call ratio is sitting at 0.31 for volume and 0.54 for open interest, which leans bullish, meaning traders are buying more calls than puts. That's usually a sign they expect the stock to go higher. So far, pretty promising, right? Now here's something that really caught my eye. The insider trading activity. Looks like the CEO, Jonathan Bates, filed some proposed sales in September, around $55 and $47 a share. Meanwhile, Director Thomas Lee had a few buys earlier in the year at about $4.50 and $44 per share. So you've got insiders selling a little at the top and some earlier ones who bought low, a mix that makes sense when you think about how much the price has moved. Insider moves don't always mean something bad. Sometimes they're just locking in profits, but it's still something I like to keep an eye on. Now, the option chain gives us another clue. We've got a lot of open interest building around the $55 to $60 strikes, which kind of lines up perfectly with that chart range we talked about earlier. That's what I love, when the data, the charts, and the options all start saying the same thing. The max pain is around $55, and the expected move based on volatility shows prices could swing between $50 and $70 over the next few weeks. So there's definitely some room to run, but also a chance it chops sideways before making a bigger move. On the fundamental side, let's put things in perspective. BMNR is a small cap. It's not trying to compete with Apple or Nvidia. Comparing them wouldn't make sense. These are two completely different ballgames. Think of BMNR more like a startup that's trying to carve its own lane in the crypto infrastructure world. They only have about 7 employees. Yeah, 7. And they're basically managing billions in digital assets. So it's a lean operation, but that also means there's a lot of risk tied to execution. If they nail it, it could be huge. If not, the stock could drop just as fast as it ran up. And hey, look, I'm not saying buy or sell here, I'm just walking you through what I'm seeing. Here's the part I really like though. They've positioned themselves not just as miners, but as treasury manager. They're trying to turn crypto into a kind of modern financial asset base, like gold, but digital. That's why their balance sheet's so loaded with ETH. They're also connected with some big names. Cathie Wood from ARK, Galaxy Digital, and other major institutions have been tied to projects or funds around them. That's the kind of credibility small caps need when they're trying to go mainstream. And if you peek at their site and investor materials, it's all about this idea of long-term accumulation of crypto assets. They're not just flipping tokens. They're building something that could play a key role in the future of decentralized finance. Pretty cool vision, right? Let's talk risk. Because, yeah, there's always risk. Crypto's volatile, regulation's still fuzzy, and the market's emotional. One headline can flip everything overnight. So if you're looking at something like BMNR, this is a speculative growth play, not a steady dividend stock. Think of it more like betting on an early-stage tech company. High risk, high potential reward. But for me, the fascinating part is seeing how small-cap blockchain players like this are evolving from pure miners to full-blown digital asset managers. It's like watching the early days of the internet all over again. Wild, unpredictable, but possibly world-changing. So here's my takeaway. BitMine is small, risky, and a little chaotic, but it's also bold, forward-thinking, and trying to play in a trillion-dollar space that's still being defined. Will it pay off? Time will tell. But either way, it's one of those stories worth keeping on your radar, because if they pull this off, we might be looking back one day saying, yeah, I remember when BMNR was only $60. Pretty cool to think about, right?